my name's Annette. Welcome back to Cotto Verde. If you're new here, this channel is all about growing things in your garden. I grow loads of cut flowers, but it's also about my actual garden and all the shrubs and flowers that I grow there and how I'm designing new spaces. Anyway, as you may have seen from the title of this video, today I'm sowing my annual phlox. I garden in South Buckinghamshire here in the UK, and that is equivalent to a zone 8B in the US. So we have fairly long summers and fairly mild winters by some standards, I suppose. Every year I grow my annual phlox from seed, and this year I thought I'd show you how I sow it. It really is one of the more simple plants to start from seed if you bear in mind a few things. In this video today, I'm just going to tell you a few things about phlox and best practices for growing them from seed, and then I'll tell you the different varieties that I'm going to be growing this year, and I'll put a picture up on the screen so you can see what they're going to look like in case you need some inspiration, and then I'll just show you how I sow them and what I'm going to do with them. And then in further videos I will show you how they've germinated and what I do with them and what they look like in my garden. So if you're interested in seeing that, do subscribe to my channel, because then you can follow along with the progress of the seeds. So the things you need to know about annual phlox is that they germinate best in darkness. Now you can either do this by covering them with a good layer of compost or a thick layer of vermiculite, or you can cover them like I do with one of those sort of gravel trays, so like a dark tray. As opposed to a clear propagator cover, you need to make sure that it's dark. I have also in the past, in desperation, covered it with just a bit of cardboard when I ran out of trays to use, but that didn't work so well because it was too close to the seeds. So I'd advise against having anything that's going to touch the seeds as they germinate, because unless you're checking them on a really regular basis, you could run into problems like I did. Anyway, so the best practice is to cover them with compost, and I think most growers say about 1/8 of an inch of compost, but I honestly prefer the method where you just cover them with a dark tray. I mean, you could use a bucket or something if you've just got, an upturned bucket if you're planting into a round pot, but I tend to start my seeds in cell trays. And the other thing to know about phlox is that phlox isn't one of the tallest plants. So when you put them out into the garden after your last frosts, you're going to be able to create a taller plant by pinching each stem. So if you keep pinching, you'll eventually have something that's a little bit taller. Of course, if you're not bothered about the height that your phlox gets to and you just want some summer bedding, then you just don't need to keep pinching at all. But you will also get more flowers if you keep pinching anyway. If you're using the method that I use, where I use an upturned gravel tray or something else like a bucket, then you do need to be checking your seedlings on a really regular basis. And I mean absolutely daily. I quite often check my seedlings out of habit. I just check constantly, actually. Well, not constantly, but I probably check twice a day. But I check all my seedlings twice a day because I find growing things from seed very exciting. But you don't need to do that. If you check once a day and you see your seeds have germinated, then please remove the dark lid, because your little seedlings need as much light as they can get. So put them in a nice bright space and keep them frost-free until you're ready to plant them out. You may need to pot them on depending on what size pot you planted them into before your last frosts, but as soon as you've had your last frosts, then you'll be able to plant them outside in the garden. Once you start growing your phlox, you can make the phlox a little bit taller. So if you're not interested, or if you are interested in just normal bedding, using your phlox for bedding, summer bedding, then they're going to look wonderful. If you keep pinching them, they'll get a bit taller. And if you want to bring some inside to use in flower arrangements and things like that, or if you're growing on a flower farm, if you keep pinching your phlox from a very early stage, then it's just going to get taller and taller, and you'll end up with longer stems. Now, some of the phlox that I'm growing this year are actually only going to get to 20 centimeters. So they're supposed to be, very low growing summer bedding, but others like the creme brulee and blushing bride, I am going to be pinching those out to make them longer. If you don't want to start your seeds inside and you haven't got room to do that, you can definitely direct sow these seeds just about when your last frost is. You can sow these in the ground, cover them with about 1/4 inch of soil or compost, and then thin them out as they start to germinate, and then you'll have wonderful plants outside. They'll just be a little bit later than if you were to start them indoors, but there's nothing wrong with that, and you absolutely can do that. In fact, you can do both. You can start some indoors and some outside, which is probably what I'm going to do this year. But today I'm just going to show you how I sow them into my cell trays for indoor growing prior to my last frost date. I'm going to go over the varieties that I'm sowing today. There aren't that many of them, and as I said, I'll pop a picture up on the screen so you can see what they look like. So the first one I'm going to talk about today that I'm starting from seed is called Promise Rose, and Promise Rose only grows to 20 centimeters tall, and I think even if you keep pinching it, it's not going to get much taller, so it's probably not necessary to pinch. And I'm growing this one to plant it in pots and, you know, the front of borders. But as you can see from the picture, it's just exactly how it sounds, Promise Rose. It's just a gorgeous, soft, pale pink colour. Not too pale, like I do believe, like it's got some intensity to it, but it just looks like this just wonderfully rose-coloured phlox, and I'm very excited about that. The next one I'm growing, I've grown many times before, and it's from the Beauty series, and it's called Phlox of Sheep. And Phlox of Sheep actually is a combination of quite a few sort of different subtle shades. So it's got sort of some creamy colours and some pale pink colours, and as you can see from the picture, lots of different variation. And I really, you know, this one grows just as well as the creme brulees and the blushing brides, but it's just got a really nice combination. It's almost a mix is how I would describe it, and I really, you know, like growing that one so that I get some variety. So the Phlox of Sheep says it only grows to 35 centimeters tall, but I definitely haven't really seen much difference between that and the other varieties in height if you keep pinching it. But as I said before, if you just want to grow it in your border as, you know, summer bedding, then it's going to look wonderful, and you really don't have to focus on pinching it out to make it taller. It's not necessary. The next one I'm growing is called Brilliant, and I love the name. As you can see from the picture, this one is a deep, bright pink. It's got a darker eye to it, and then it fades to a paler pink on the outside, but I do think it's going to be quite vibrant. I'm looking for more of that in my borders, and I think it'll really add something to my bouquets, so I'm really happy about that one. It says it grows to 45 centimeters, so we're getting a bit taller. The next one I'm growing is called Creme Brulee, and I have grown this many times before. It is a wonderful creme brulee colour, a lovely sort of pale caramelly colour that goes with so many other wonderful flowers. I think that creme brulee is a very popular flower at the moment to grow from seed. It's one of the ones that a lot of flower farmers are growing, and I can see why. It really is a gorgeous, gorgeous colour. Creme brulee is one of the phlox that I will keep pinching out, because if you keep pinching it, then it's just going to get taller and taller, and it will be long enough to use in bouquets if that's what you're looking for. I do find that creme brulee is one of the varieties that, because you keep pinching it, it can get a little bit floppy and sprawly. I really like that in my borders, actually. I like the wildness and the casualness. Is that a word? I like the fact that it sprawls, so that doesn't bother me. But if that is going to be a problem for you, then, you know, just use some staking, prop it up somehow, and you'll be good to go. And the next one I'm growing is very similar, and it's called Blushing Bride. Blushing Bride is my absolute favourite annual phlox to grow, and that is because the flowers have such a variation of pink and white. So each flower is very different, and I just love looking at like the intricate details of each of these flowers. And you probably think I'm completely mad, but I think they're so beautiful. They really are a perfect colour to go with so many things that I have in my garden, and they look wonderful, you know, just sprawling and intermingling with all my other plants. And I really like planting them en masse, so that there's sort of like a big splash of them. They keep going forever, especially if you deadhead them, and, you know, if you pinch them out, they'll just get taller and taller. So it's another one that you'll probably have to stake if you want them to be upright, but your stems are going to be a little bit sort of higgledy-piggledy just from the pinching. So you're never going to get a completely straight stem from any of the annual phlox, I don't think. I have no experience of every annual phlox, but they'll never be like, you know, absolutely straight stems, but that doesn't matter. I think it adds something to a flower arrangement anyway. I also want to mention that it is possible to collect your own seed. Obviously, if you're growing lots of different varieties, they are not going to come true to type, but you never know what you're going to end up with. So it's a little bit of fun if you want to later on in the season, just save some of your seed heads and then dry them out. And then you can save the seeds and sprinkle them next year, and you never know what you're going to get. You may design a wonderful new variety. Bear in mind, they probably aren't going to come true to the original plant. So now I'm just going to show you how I sow them. The compost I'm using today is the Melcourt Silver Grow peat-free compost. It's the compost that I always use to sow my seeds. I've been using it for a few years and I don't have too many problems with it. So what I'm doing is over sowing the creme brulee because they're very old seed. In fact, what I do is I've learnt that I need to label my packets with when I receive the seed, because otherwise I get very confused, and some seed packets don't have expiration dates on, and I've only started doing that in the last few years, and this particular packet doesn't even have a date on it, which means it predates when I was labeling my seed packets, so it must be really old, like maybe 4 or 5 years. So I'm basically going to finish the packet, and hopefully at least one seed in each cell is going to germinate. I'm just going to cover the cells, cover the seeds a little bit with some of this compost. And it doesn't matter too much because I'm going to put the upturned gravel tray on it, as I said. So I don't really need to cover them, but I will. There, that's my seed packet with no date on it whatsoever. Whereas nowadays, as you can see, I put a date on my packet so I know when I received it. And the same with my blushing bride, it's very old seed, so I'm going to heavily oversow. If I have too many seedlings, I will literally just thin them out, and I will keep the strongest and bin the weakest because I don't need this many plants. I may give some if they look healthy, I may give some to friends, but I don't tend to keep them. It's really hard to do actually. If you've sown seeds ever, you'll know how difficult it is to stop yourself from keeping them. It's so tempting to keep every little seed baby you grow. So that's it, I've sown all my seeds now, so I'm going to bottom water them, and the trays will just absorb water through the little holes at the bottom until they've had enough. Then I'll drain them, put them on my heat mat and cover them with the upturned gravel tray and wait for them to germinate. Your phlox seed should germinate in about 21 days, so sometime before that, depending on how much heat you give them. I'm hoping that mine will germinate a bit faster because I've got a lot to get on my heat mats. But I will definitely keep you updated with how everything's doing. So do subscribe to my channel if you're interested in seeing that. And if you've enjoyed this video and think that other people might enjoy it too, then please give it a like because that really helps my channel and I would really appreciate it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you all next time.